Okay, raise your hand if you get frustrated when you take a photo and it's misfocused. And then keep your hand raised if you shot that photo with a Leica M rangefinder camera, digital rangefinder camera. And then keep your hand raised if you wish that there was a solution so that all future digital photos were in focus. Stay tuned, in this video, that's exactly what we're talking about. Hello, Matt Osborne here from MrLeica.com. So yes, as you may have already guessed from the title, we're talking about the Leica SL digital camera. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you'll know that a few months ago I bought a Lumix S5 digital camera as a cheap alternative to a Leica SL2S. So the question you may have is, why am I now talking about a Leica SL? In brief, I was very happy with the photos from the Lumix S5 camera, but I felt like a bit of a fraud. For those of you that don't know, I teach quite a few one-to-one photography workshops, often with Leica photographers. And so I'd rock up to the workshop and I'd have my Leica M240, also my Leica CL as my main camera, and then I'd have the Lumix S5 as usually the backup camera for the last couple of months. And I just felt like a complete joke. I was turning up supposedly as Mr. Leica, and I know it's just a silly name, but I enjoy using Leica camera. So people often contact me asking for help on how to get better images or make better use of their Leica camera. So I just felt like a complete joke / fraud turning up with a Lumix camera. So to cut the longer story short, I've bought a Leica SL. In this video, I'll tell you 10 reasons why you may want to buy a Leica SL in 2021. And if you stay till the end, I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons next to my Leica M240 and my Leica CL digital cameras to give you an idea of the size and things like that. Let's get started. The number one reason, probably by far, is the fact that I find it really frustrating when the Leica M240 rangefinder gets knocked out of calibration, and then I either need to rely on the EVF hot shoe electronic viewfinder, which I've been doing for the last kind of 6 months or so, or I need to send it off to Germany to get the rangefinder recalibrated. One of you viewers asked me how often do I send my Leica M rangefinder camera for recalibration from kind of regular use, and I'd say if I use it daily I'd probably be sending it every year, but because I'm using the Leica CL as well, I've been sending it roughly every 18 months for recalibration. And if that's your main work tool, you cannot afford to send your tool off for, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks to be recalibrated every 18 months. It's just not practical, and it's getting a little bit frustrating. As some of you know, I do really love rangefinder cameras. I use a lot of rangefinder film cameras, but when it's your main kind of daily work tool, it needs to work, and the frustrations kind of built up bit by bit over the years before getting my Lumix. That was one of the reasons for buying the Lumix, and it's just got to the point where I need to find a solution. So number one, Leica M cameras get knocked out of calibration easier than you may think. That could be a Leica M10, Leica M240, Leica M8, Leica M9, whatever. It affects all of them. So there was no point me buying a Leica M10 because it would suffer from the same fate as my Leica M240, for example. For any of you wondering why I didn't get an M10. Reason number two, the EVF on the M240 is too slow for professional use, i.e. for me, portraiture and kind of model shoots, fashion shoots, things like that. It's just not practical. The girls have fell asleep by the time you've taken your photo, or more to the point, they've either moved or they've blinked just as you're about to take the picture. So again, not practical. Number three, I bang on about this all the time. The 0.7 close focus distance on a Leica M rangefinder camera is not suitable for all aspects of portraiture. Yes, you can work around it, and yes, I have worked around it until this point, but it's got to the point where I just thought, why don't I just buy the correct tool for the job rather than using a street shooter camera for studio portraits, for example. Yes, you can use a Leica M camera for portraiture, and yes, you can use an SL camera for street photography, but the SL camera for me tends to be more suited to portraits and getting closer, and the M240 is probably better suited for reportage, street photography, things like that. They both have their place, don't get me wrong, but for the way I'm going at the moment, I needed something that would focus closer than 0.7 meters. I just put a little star there. Yes, you can get some lenses with close focus adapters, which will let you focus usually 50mm lenses closer than 0.7 meters. But for some of my portraits, I quite enjoy the 35mm focal length. You can, of course, focus closer to 0.7 meters if you use the live view or EVF, but as I've already mentioned, that's too slow for professional use. Reason number four, I could have got a Leica Q camera. Why didn't I get a Leica Q? Because the Leica Q is a 28mm fixed focal length lens. portraits can be shot at 28mm, and I do shoot some portraits at 28mm, but it doesn't work for everything. I needed a camera that had interchangeable lenses to allow me to have one tool for every application, whether it's wide angle lenses or telephoto lenses. So that ruled out the Q and the Q2. Number 5, why don't I just use my Leica CL, because I can focus closer and it's got an EVF. The downside of the Leica CL is it is a crop sensor camera, meaning you don't get all the juicy goodness and kind of bokeh and swirl on the edges of the images when you're using things like classic lenses in particular. As you may know, I do enjoy using vintage lenses, so when you're cropping only the center of the image, you are losing lots of the nice character of the lens. Number 6, why don't you get a Leica M10? As already mentioned, the Leica M10 is a rangefinder camera, so it's going to suffer from the same issues as my Leica M240, i.e. if it gets knocked, it needs recalibrating. Number 7, why don't I get a Leica SL2 camera? The two reasons I didn't really look at the SL2, despite it being an amazing camera, is the high cost and the higher megapixels. Higher megapixels means it's going to fill up my computer faster, although it is very useful in certain situations. And number 2, it costs more, so I was trying to get a more affordable option. And that brings me on nicely to reason number 8. Why didn't I buy the latest Leica SL2S, which I was tempted to buy previously when buying the Lumix S5? Main reason, the cost. I could buy the Leica SL for 50% less than the SL2S. And both cameras do more or less the same job, so I was happy to spend 50% less to see if I like the system. And then maybe if SL2 prices come down at a later date, I could look to get an SL2S in 2 or 3 years time, something like that. Number 9, a strong reason for getting the SL in 2021. The price has not moved on the Leica SL camera since 2020 and perhaps even before 2020. So back in 2020, the Leica Mayfair store kindly lent me their Leica SL camera so I could do some testing. And when I reviewed that camera in summer of 2020, it's exactly the same as the price in summer of 2021. That means to my mind the depreciation is kind of almost stopped on the SL camera, where the price is starting to level off now, which basically means you're not going to lose a huge chunk of money if you buy an SL camera now and sell it in 6 months. So again, that makes me more comfortable when buying a digital camera. If I bought an SL2S, because it's a new camera, it's going to depreciate down to roughly the SL price, probably over the next 3 to 4 years. I'm just speculating, but that's normally what happens with new cameras. Whereas the SL is now an old camera, relatively in digital terms. So for that reason, the price is more or less leveled off for the time being. And finally, number 10, why was I not happy with my Lumix S5, which I'm using for video? Don't get me wrong, this camera is amazing for video and it's more than functional for photos. But as already mentioned, it's not a Leica camera. I do really appreciate the simplicity and the design and the menus and the build quality of Leica cameras. It doesn't matter if it's my CL, my M cameras, my vintage Leica cameras, or in this case the Leica SL. They're just designed and built in such a way that they're just really nice to use. I can't really summarize it any better than that. If I want to try and be really specific for any of you on the fence whether to get a Leica or, in this example, a Lumix S5, the main trigger point for me for getting the Leica SL was the fact that I didn't enjoy focusing manual focus lenses on the Lumix S5. Yes, it's totally doable and my photos were in focus, so that's not an issue. It just wasn't as fluid as with my Leica CL camera, which also has an EVF. I just want something that's really, really quick. One press or one roll of a dial, zoomed in straight away, critically focused, take my shot. I can work really fast like that. So with models, it's almost as fast as using an autofocus lens. I can be really confident, really quick, yet I can use all the amazing manual focus lenses, whether it's Leica M lenses, Leica R lenses, Leica thread mount lenses, or even non-Leica lenses. The Leica SL viewfinder and magnification for critical focus is definitely better than the Lumix S5, and the menus are better, and it's built nicer, and it's heavier, but I'll come on to that in a second. So as I use all three cameras, let me show you a size comparison, Leica CL, Leica M240, and now the Leica SL. Firstly, you can see from above the difference in size, and both how small the Leica CL is, and the depth of the battery grip and the viewfinder on the Leica SL, making the body bigger than it would be because of the battery grip. If we now look at the cameras from the front, firstly, please excuse me for having the wrong body caps on the camera bodies. I know it looks a bit of a mess. I was just trying to give you some kind of size comparison and I couldn't find the correct body caps. So again, you can see the size difference here, the Leica CL being the smallest, the M240, as everyone knows, in the middle, and the Leica SL on the end. And if I'm looking at cameras, you may wonder how much they weigh. The Leica SL is 25% heavier than the Leica M240, and the Leica SL is 50% heavier than the Leica CL camera. So as you know on this channel, I like my numbers, so let me give you a few stats. The Leica SL weighs 847 grams, which is around 30 ounces. The M240 weighs 680 grams, which is 24 ounces. And the Leica CL weighs 403 grams, which is 14 ounces. Those weights include the battery in the camera body. So as you can see, the CL is a featherweight and the SL is a bit more of a tank. So what happens now, you may ask? What happens to my Leica CL? What happens to my Leica M240? I know some of you regular viewers are Leica CL shooters. Is the Leica CL suddenly a bad camera? Absolutely not. Will I sell it? I'm not planning to sell it. I need a lightweight camera for travel, and definitely as a lightweight travel backup camera. So I will be keeping the Leica CL camera. What about the M240? Is it time to sell the M240 and stick to all modern EVF cameras? Again, I think no. I am a rangefinder shooter and I do need a digital rangefinder camera to test rangefinder lenses on. Firstly, I need to get the camera recalibrated and then it'll be back in action, and I will keep that for certain situations where rangefinders are better suited. But for my portraits and in the studio, the Leica CL is now going to become my main shooter, using probably mostly M lenses and R lenses. First impressions of the Leica SL. I really like it. I really like it. More than I expected. I thought it would just be like the Lumix S5. Obviously it won't be because it's a Leica. But that was my thought. I was just thinking a full frame heavy camera, look through an electronic viewfinder, won't be the same as a rangefinder camera. The viewfinder took me a little bit of time to get used to. To start off with, it looked a bit like looking through a video camera, and then I thought, I prefer rangefinders, but half a day and I was just like, this is amazing. Once I'd set up the focus peaking, the favourite settings, so I could do my one-step zoom in, take my photo, set up the diopters for my prescription so I could just see crystal clear. Now it's working like an absolute dream. Yes, it's heavier, but at the same time, it almost feels tougher. And I'm just so happy and excited that I can now take this camera around. And if it gets knocked in the bag, it's still going to work. And I'm still going to get super sharp photos. Obviously, if the model doesn't move and I don't screw up the photo. But generally speaking, I can probably now get photos 95% in focus rather than not in focus if the M240 rangefinder is not calibrated. Finally, a few bonus reasons for buying a Leica SL camera. Because it is an L mount camera, you could use a 7 Artisans close focus Leica L to M mount adapter. That then allows you to focus all Leica M mount lenses closer than their standard 0.7 meters, or in some cases 1 meter on a telephoto lens. So now suddenly all my Leica M lenses can focus to roughly 0.3, 0.4 meters. Don't quote me on that, but it's roughly that. It's a lot closer. It's kind of as close as you would need to get without doing macro. Number two, certain lens manufacturers, for example Voigtlander, some of their lenses already focus to 0.5 meters, kind of straight off the shelf. So now I can use all the Voigtlander lenses at 0.5 meters, give me a shallow depth of field, give me a nicer bokeh, and everything just becomes nicer when you can get closer, I think. As already mentioned, I can use my R lenses, which is a massive plus because I'm really enjoying the Leica R lenses. And then 4, and lastly, I can use fast lenses really accurately and really confidently. Great example is Leica Noctilux 50mm f1 version 2 for anybody that cares. Number 2, Leica Summicron 75mm f2 Apo. I found that lens particularly difficult to hit focus on the Leica M240. Number 3, Leica Summicron 90mm f2 pre-spherical. I could use that on the M240, but it's even easier now on the Leica SL, and I can focus closer than 1 meter with the 7 Artisans close focus adapter. And so to summarize in one line, how do I feel about the Leica SL? It just works. It's so nice to have a tool that just works. I need something that just lets me get my shot without getting in the way. And the Leica SL at the moment seems to be the tool for the job. So